and welcome to another episode of the Richmond BigFooty Tigercast. I'm your host Michaels, and we've got a very special edition on tonight with the Brownlow medal coming up. We have our resident Brownlow Guru, ironically enough, who posts his thread on the main board once a year with all the Brownlow insight. So Brownlow Guru, welcome to you.
Hi, happy to be here.
What we do with all of our guests, we usually just find out a little bit about them in terms of the team they support. So who do you actually follow in the AFL?
I support the mighty Port Adelaide. I'm a little tender at the moment. I don't really want to talk too much about it. It was a very, very tough weekend.
Yes. The only follow-up question I'll ask is, how did you become a Port Adelaide supporter?
I grew up in country South Australia in the Port Adelaide recruiting zone. So Port Adelaide's pretty well supported. This is the SNFL side, of course. It was pretty well supported by across the state, but especially in the area where I grew up. So, following him since I was a kid. Had a lot of success in the 80s, a lot of success in the 90s, and, obviously I've been supporting him ever since they joined the AFL. And whilst we've only had the one premiership, it's been a pretty good ride for the most part, except for perhaps sort of 5-6 years ago where it got a bit ugly, but no, it's been good.
And is the rivalry with Adelaide as big and as nasty as what it's made out to be down here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I lived in Melbourne for a bit, and I live in Sydney now, and the rivalry in Adelaide between Port and the Crows is genuine. There are strong reasons for that. I mean, Port Adelaide was the Collingwood of the SANFL, so already half the population hated them anyway. And they were the big ticket in town, obviously. And then when the Crows were formed, and even that formation was in some ways done because Port Adelaide was looking to join the AFL. Straight away, the Port supporters stayed supporting Port Adelaide in the SNFL, and everyone else jumped on the Crows bandwagon. And then Port continued to win SNFL premierships, and most Port supporters I know pretty much hated the Crows from day one. A few of them sort of went, oh, look, I'll support the Crows, and after about 6 weeks where the newspapers just wanted to talk nothing but Crows, and those who've been to Adelaide know this. It's saturation coverage to the nth degree. And then it was the logical rivalry for the AFL to choose Port as the second team from South Australia, because you're either Port or you're not. And as you probably know, there's probably 70% of South Australia would be Crow supporters, and all the media is very pro-Crows, and Port's definitely the little brother in the relationship, but they've worked pretty hard, I think, growing their brand a bit more outside, I can say.
Definitely have. And I suppose Port are starting to get a few more people in the media. I think Treadray's got a bit more influence now. Kane Corns, despite his hate for Richmond, he's in the media a bit more now. So it is good there's more representation, and it's not just Adelaide-centric. So I must admit, from a Melbourne perspective, I always enjoy watching the showdowns whenever you guys play each other. The atmosphere just looks unbelievable. Yeah,
it is a big event. I haven't actually been to a showdown. It's on my bucket list. I live in Sydney these days, so I don't get to Adelaide that often. But it's a big event, and I've got friends here in Sydney who are Crow supporters, and we always catch up for the showdown. And it hasn't been much fun for me of recent, but I'm sure the worm will turn soon.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get one back on them. Well, let's move on to what we're here for. So all about the Brownlow medal predictions. So How did you kind of get into doing the Brownlow medal predictions? What sort of sparked your interest?
It was probably, I think in 2003, Adam Goods won. It was actually the three-way tie, if I remember correctly. And I remember in the finals that year, the first week of the finals, which again was another AB Port Adelaide moment, they lost to Sydney in a qualifying final. And Adam Goods' odds basically halved after that game, even though being a final, it didn't count towards the Brownlow. And it just seemed ridiculous that the Brownlow medal, which had already been effectively run, was still, the odds were quite varying, and they do tend to change a lot between the end of the season and the actual day of the count. And the following year, 2004, I think most pundits and bookies had Rewalt, Treadray and Judd as pretty much equal favourites. I think, in fact, Rewalt and Treadray were probably the two joint favourites, but Judd wasn't that far behind. And Judd absolutely smashed it in, and Rewalt and Treadray hardly polled a vote, which again showed that it's very much a midfielder's medal. And so with so much variation there, I'm a bit of a maths geek, as you probably imagine, judging by my posts. I just thought it'd be interesting to look into it and really see what, for me, it showed that the past polling history was a big factor. If you can see someone who's polled well in the past, or someone who hasn't polled well in the past, you can usually extrapolate that to their future counts. So I started playing around with it a bit, and 2005 and 2006, even though the winners were favourites, clear favourites that year, I think it was Cousins in 05 and Goods in 06. I put together a bit of a model which seemed to match up pretty well, not just the winners but the placings around them. So in 2007, when I sort of went through and did my calculations again, it did show that in that year Gary Ablett was a really short favourite. I think he was probably even money, and my model had Bartel at as a clear favourite. I can't remember what I had him at. Probably looking at the post. And everything that I saw seemed to point to the fact that Bartel would poll well. He had a history of polling well. He'd had a good season. The Cats had obviously won a lot of games. Ablett at that point hadn't had a really strong polling history, even though he was a dominant player. So I put my post up on BigFooty, copped a bit of flack. Everyone thought I was full of rubbish, and Bartel went in and won in a canter. And that obviously got a few people's interest, and I've kept posting every year since then. And as we were talking a little about before, it's generally a reasonable guide. I think it's as good a guide as you can get. I think it's a better guide than you'll find in other places and through the bookies in the market. If you look on my posts on BigFooty, I do show the history of. I've been doing it every year since 2007. So the results are there for people to look at.
Absolutely, and there's obviously a mountain of work that goes into all of this. So what is kind of involved? Like, what data do you collect, and the analysing, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so the nuts and bolts of it is every game is analysed. From every game, I've identified some factors that are important to polling. If you think of it, it's just, it's based primarily on stats. There is a bit of subjective viewing as well. And effectively, I'm able to give usually between sort of 6 to 10 players a probability of getting the 3 votes and the 2 votes and the 1 vote for that game. And that's based on a number of factors such as disposals, where they're playing, the result of the game, all those type of things you'd expect to filter into doing this calculation. And then with that result that I get from every game, I'm then able to simulate the season across the 198 games in order to work out the probability for each player to sort of poll through the season in order to get wins and top 3s and top 5s. And there's a fair amount of calibration that goes into it based on their polling history and, the probability of a team getting 3 votes, 2 votes, or 1 vote. They win by 20 goals. Teams, players generally poll better if they're at home, and that's probably, I think, because the crowd is more likely to cheer on Dusty at the MCG than they are to cheer on Robbie Gray, whereas they're playing at Adelaide Oval the other way around. So there's a number of factors to go into it, but essentially I go through, run simulations, run it. I think I've done about 250,000 for this year, and from that you can sort of say, well, based on that, this player is going to win X amount of times, and that really reflects their true odds as I see it.
It's extremely thorough. That's unbelievable to hear about that. And you put your own version of odds against your calculations. How do you sort of work out your odds? What's that sort of number based from? That's
through the simulation. So if we run 1,000 simulations and my model shows that Dangerfield's won 600 of those, then his odds would be $1.66, which is 1,000 divided by 600. So that's what it does, and it goes through and if you run it 250,000 times, then you'll have a lot of different players who will come up as having different odds. So that's really the way to do it. And those, as I said, there's a fair amount of calibration that's gone in to work out how much to attribute those things, how much to assign random, not random, or sort of pseudo-random values in order to get different results every time. You find that if someone like Clayton Oliver, for example, who doesn't have much in the way of a polling history, we don't know whether the umpire is going to like him or not like him. So there's a lot more variation in his results than there would be in someone like Gary Ablett, who we know that the umpires are going to recognise. And, if he plays really well, he's going to get the 3 votes. And if he doesn't play well, then he's still a chance of sneaking one here or there.
Okay, no, that's fascinating. All right, we'll get stuck into it. So we'll start with the top 10 prediction. What did you sort of have for the top 10?
Well, it's really interesting this year because with Dangerfield being suspended, we've got Martin as a clear favourite. Sorry, I'm just actually opening up. I haven't got it open in front of me. Sorry, I haven't prepared very well. But yeah, I've actually got this year, surprisingly, and it's not what the bookies think. I've actually got it that the person who's most likely to poll the most votes is actually Dangerfield. Now that surprised me when that came out. He's actually sort of a 2-to-1. So I've got for every 3 simulations, effectively, I've got Dangerfield winning 2 and Dusty winning 1. But if you take Dangerfield out, which obviously we are with this year, then we've got Dusty winning it pretty much 95% of the time. There's not anyone else who's likely to come close to him. So for Richmond supporters, that's pretty good news. You're a fair chance that he's going to take it home this year. I can't see really only players who I can see as being a half a decent chance to win it other than him. So Dusty Martin's at 95% is Tom Mitchell and Josh Kelly, and they're both pretty much the same at 44-1. So, there's a 1 in 44 chance that Tom Mitchell will get it, 1 in 44 chance Josh Kelly will get it. And then after that, it's Sloane at 300, Taylor Adams at 2,700, Clayton Oliver at 3,800. And then I've got Bontempelli, Ross, Beams from Brisbane, and Josh Kennedy. So they're my top 10 eligible players to win.
Wow, so it does drop off quite a bit, doesn't it? After
He's the strongest favourite we've seen ever. Well, at least in the 12 years that I've been modelling it.
Yeah.
He's actually, I'm expecting him to be about 8 votes clear of second place, Mitchell or Kelly.
That's a huge margin, isn't it? Well, that's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out between Danger and Dusty. The other one.
So the interesting thing about that is with Dusty and Danger, and the thing that intrigues me about it is that Dangerfield got suspended in round 19, I think it was 18 or 19, and at that point they were both even. Now, what my model doesn't do is it doesn't get into the head of umpires. I do have a sneaking suspicion that the umpires will probably not rate Dangerfield as highly after he got suspended. I don't think anyone really wants to see a suspended player win the Brownlow. So it'll be interesting to watch in his last couple of games whether the umpires just knock his 2 votes down to a 1 or his 3 down to a 2. And if they do that, then Martin should win because they are pretty close.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it would. Yeah, the AFL definitely don't want that to happen again. So it would just cause so much outroar. It wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah.
The other one you usually post up is your top 3. Oh, sorry. You usually look at a top 20 for the top 3 placings.
Yep.
Is there any more variation in that than what you had for the top 10 for the outright winner?
Yeah, they're more or less the same. There is, as I sort of mentioned before, there are some players who have a higher, going all geeky math speak, have a higher standard deviation in that they're more likely to poll really high and they're more likely to poll really low. There's a bit more variability in them. And Clayton Oliver's the example I gave of that. So whilst he's effectively 6th favourite to win in my book, he's 3rd, 4th, 7th favourite for the place, the top 3, and he'd be about 8th or 9th in the top 10. So the top 3 I have are Martin, Mitchell, Kelly, Sloane, Adams, Bontempelli, Oliver, Ross, Kennedy, Beams. And I think that was the same as what I had before. And the top 5's more or less the same. I think Kennedy and Ross swap over, but they're almost identical. So that gives you a fair idea. There's actually quite a bit of a gap between Mitchell and Kelly versus the guys, Mitchell, Kelly and Sloane, and the guys below them. So I've actually got, if you look at there's actually sort of 3 bands this year. There's Martin and Dangerfield who are streets ahead of everyone else. There's Mitchell, Kelly, Sloane and Zach Merritt, who's ineligible as well. They're in the next group of 4. They're all reasonably similar, with Mitchell and Kelly just slightly ahead of those. And then once you get down to sort of the next group, you can throw a blanket over them.
Wow, that's pretty good insight. It's definitely going to add to my Monday night watching it. And the other one that I suppose people usually like to have a look at is the possible top four vote getters for each club.
Yep. So again, I can go through. I've got my sort of club, similar things with the club. So in Adelaide, Sloane's miles ahead. He's a 98% chance of winning that. Then there's Crouch, Laird, and Jacobs. For Brisbane, it's Dane Beams and Zorko. There's not much between them. Dane Beams is 55%, Zorko's about 45%, and Rockcliffe's 1%. So there's pretty much no one behind those. Steph Martin's probably the next likely, but he's way behind those three. So Beams, Zorko, Rockcliffe, Martin. Carlton, I've got Murphy, Doherty, Gibbs, and Cruiser, and they're all reasonably close. Murphy's at sort of 40%, and Cruiser's at 12%, and Doherty and Gibbs are in between. Collingwood, I've got Adams pretty clearly from Treloar, Pendlebury, then Sidebottom. Essendon, I've got Zach Merritt, massive favourite from Zaharakis, Heppel, and Danaher. Fremantle, there's not much between Neil and Fife. I've got Neil just ahead of Fife. And then Walters, and then a big gap back to Brad Hill. Gold Coast is Gary Ablett way ahead. And then it's Lions, who I think is at reasonable value, I think. I haven't checked recently, but I don't think he's got a lot of notice like most Gold Coast players. Lions, Hall, and Lynch. For Geelong, Dangerfield by how far? I've only got two possible winners there. Duncan's at 1 in 250,000. GWS, Kelly's miles ahead there. Then Shield, Ward, and Cameron. Hawthorn, I've got Tom Mitchell miles ahead there. Gunston's hardly even a chance, but he's next. Kangaroos, there's not much between Higgins and Brown. We then go to Cunnington and Goldstein. Melbourne's got Clayton Oliver clearly ahead, about 70%. And then Nathan Jones, Hibbard, and Tom McDonald. Port's got Robbie Gray, and then not much from Wines, Ebert, and Ryder. I'll come to Richmond last. St Kilda's got Ross, Stephen, Billings, and Robertson. Ross is a pretty clear favourite there. Sydney's got Franklin at about 60%, Kennedy at 60%, then Franklin, Parker, and then a fair bit back to Hanbury. The Bulldogs have Bontempelli, pretty clear, then McRae, and then back a bit further to Dalhouse, and then way back to Hunter. And West Coast have Josh Kennedy to win from Sam Mitchell, Shuey, and Gaff. There's quite a few there. Now with Richmond, I've got Dusty Martin winning that in 99.999% of the time. Next most likely is Cochrane, 1 in over 200,000. And then Rewalt and Rance would make out the 4 there.
Okay, then. Interesting. The one that probably stood out to me was Gary Ablett. I know there was a bit made of him winning the best and fairest, playing not many games. Did that result surprise you?
Not really. He's got a pretty good. Since he's been to the Gold Coast, he's got a pretty good history of polling up there. I think that's as much a factor as the other players don't have much of a profile. You do have to remember the umpires, whilst they're not biased, they do live and train in Melbourne, so they don't get exposed to the Gold Coast guys who are pretty low on the radar of anyone bar Gold Coast supporters, really. So with his profile, I think a good game for Gary at Gold Coast will put him in ahead of the other guys up there, which is not to say, I mean, Presti used to poll pretty well up there. I'm interested to see how Jack Martin polls. He's had a pretty good year. He might be someone who catches their eye and does quite well. I've got him 6th in their vote catching. Hall got a lot of votes last year early on, so it's not impossible for him to poll well, but for someone else to win. But Gary's had a pretty good season. The games he has played, he has scored very well.
Okay, we'll push on to the last thing we want to do. Is you were kind enough to offer to go through Dusty round by round and just give a bit of an indication on how many votes you think you might get, just for all the Richmond people out there on the board that I'm no doubt will be hanging out to hear this.
Yeah, so look, as I said, it's going to be a good night for a Richmond supporter, I think. I've got him polling anywhere between 45 and 18. 18 is an absolute minimum. I expect him to get in the order of 32 to 35. I expect Dangerfield to get around there as well. And that's back to Mitchell, Kelly and Sloan around 22, 23. So he should have a pretty sizable gap early on the night. Then you guys can sit back, have a drink and enjoy the show.
As long as he doesn't sit back and have a drink, and because if he has to give a speech, he's getting better. But we'd rather him do that with a clear head, I think.
Yeah, they won't be serving Chinese food at the town, will they?
I don't think so. No.
So it should be fine then.
Yep, chopstick free zone. All right, so if I go through the rounds, okay. So round 1 was versus Carlton. We won by 43 points.
Yeah, so I've got him clear favourite to win the 3 votes. I've got him at about an 85% chance of doing that. The only one that's likely to get it from him would be Prestia, but I'm expecting him to get 3 votes for that game. He's the most likely guy to get 3 votes in round 1.
Round 2 was versus Collingwood. We won by 19 points.
Yeah, I've got Cochin most likely that week. I've got him 5th in my in my chances. So if he polls 1 vote, then you're pretty much on your way. But it's more likely that he won't in round 2.
Round 3 versus West Coast, we won by 11 points.
In round 3 versus West Coast, again, I've got him as a really strong chance to get the 3 votes that round. The only one that might take it off him would be Cochin, who had a reasonable game. And because it was close, there's a chance that Gaff or Shuey might. But again, I've got him at about a 82% chance of getting the 3 votes that week.
Round 4 versus Brisbane, we won by 52 points.
He's not on my radar at all. I think it'll be most likely Jack Rewalt. It's about a 50% chance of getting the votes that round. Cochin, Rockcliffe or Grieger a chance to get sort of to make up the numbers with that one as well. Either of those guys could get the 3 really, but I haven't got Dusty anywhere close in round 4.
Round 5 versus Melbourne, we won by 13 points.
Again, he's 5th in line there. I've got Jack Rewalt as the best chance at about a 55% chance. Nankervis is a 33% chance, and then Oliver and Hibbert are ahead of him. I've got him as a sneaky chance to get 1 vote in that one, but more likely than not.
Round 6 versus Adelaide, we lost by 76.
No, I got no chance.
No chance,
no. No. I've got if a Richmond player's lucky enough to snag a vote, it'll be Cochin, not Martin, for that one, unfortunately.
No, that's fair enough. Round 7 versus Western Bulldogs, we lost by 5 points.
Yeah, look, I've got him as a good chance to get 1. I've got Bontempelli as the clear favourite in that one, and I've got Dalhouse as the second favourite. He's the only Richmond player I've got in the top 5, so given it was a close game, the umpires might see him favourably. So I'd suggest he's probably going to get 1, but there's no reason why he couldn't get 2. Unlikely to get 3 though.
Round 8 versus Fremantle, lost by 2 points.
Yeah, this was peak Richmond, wasn't it? This was when you're having a terrible time. I've got Walters really clear favourite to win that one, and I've got Martin down at 6th, so he's behind. If a Richmond player is going to get it, I've got him well behind Rance and Grigg, who are 3rd and 4th, most likely to get votes in that game.
And to continue on our run of close losses, round 9 versus GWS, lost by 3 points.
Yeah, I've actually got him as the favourite to get the 3. If the games are close, then the umpires aren't afraid these days to give it to the losing side. I've got him as a 60% chance to get the 3. I've got Josh Kelly as a 20% chance, and I've got Rance as a 15% chance. So I think those 3 will pretty much share the votes, and I think Martin will get the 3 for that one.
Round 10 versus Essendon, we won by 15 points.
What do we have here? Yeah, look, I've got him favourite again for that one. That's 66% chance of getting the votes there. Next most likely is Trent Cotchin, and Brandon Ellis isn't far behind either. I've got 5 of the top 6 being Richmond. I can't remember if that was it was 15 points. So I would have thought that some Essendon players may have thought out. I've got Zaharakis, the highest Essendon guys, in 4th.
Round 11 versus Kangaroos, we won by 35 points.
Yeah, I've got him big chance to get the 3 there, 80 80-odd% chance.
Round 12 was the bye. So round 13 was versus Sydney. We lost by 9 points.
Yeah, I have him down at the 6th most likely. I've got Heaney and Rance and Lloyd all more likely to get the votes. Newman and Julia, it's actually really close as 5. Those 5 guys are all between sort of 20% and 16% chance of getting the 3 votes. But there's a bit of a gap from them to Martin, so I think it's going to be a raffle amongst those guys for the votes.
Round 14 versus Carlton, we won by 26 points.
Yeah, I've got him clear favourite there again, a 60% chance.
Round 15 versus Port Adelaide, your mob, we won by 13 points.
Oh, that wasn't a good day. We've got him clear favourite there at 75% to get the 3 votes from Lambert, with Wingard being a slight chance.
Round 16 versus St Kilda, we lost by 67 points.
Yeah, you've got not much chance.
0 chance. We were disgusting that day.
Yep.
Round 17 versus Brisbane, we won by 31 points.
Yeah, I've got him as the clear favourite there as well, at about a 75% chance of getting the 3. The only one likely to steal that off him would be Cochrane.
Round 18 versus GWS, we won by 19 points.
Yeah, so at the end of round 17, just out of interest, that's when I have Dangerfield about 4 to 5 votes ahead of Martin, and that's the biggest gap. So he starts reeling him in from here. I've got him getting 3 votes against the Giants. I've got him as a 82% chance of doing that. So that's when he starts coming back.
Round 20 versus Hawthorn, we won by 29 points.
Did you miss round 19 versus Richmond Gold Coast?
Possibly. Gold Coast won by 33 points.
Yeah, I've got him as a 80% chance for that one from Paul and Cotton.
Okay. Round 20 versus Hawthorn, won by 29 points.
I've got him as a sneaky chance for 1, but he's fourth most likely behind Caddy, Lambert and Prestia. 21
versus Geelong, we lost by 14 points.
Yeah, I've got nothing. Didn't fire a shot. That's one of the ones I'm going to be looking at or talked about before with Dangerfield, because I've got not much between him and Harry Taylor. So it'll be interesting to see how the umpires see that.
Gee, it'd be hard to look past Harry Taylor, wouldn't it, after the effort he put out for that game?
Yeah, I mean, Harry being a defender usually polls okay. I don't know how well he polls as a forward with that role change, so that'll be interesting to see as well.
Round 22 versus Fremantle, we won by 104 points.
Yeah, I've got him a good chance to get the 3. I've got him a 60% chance to get the 3 from Grigg or Townsend.
I was about to ask about Townsend. That's interesting that he does come into calculations for that one.
Yeah, so I've got him as a good chance to get 1 vote in that game, and that's the first time he's on the radar. I don't know if he's a slight chance to get a vote in the last round as well.
Yeah, that was his first game. So
yeah.
He was, and then round 23 versus St Kilda, we won by 41 points.
Yeah, the Dusty Show finished off in style. I've got him as a 65% chance of getting the 3 votes from Grigg in that game.
Okay, so just in summary again, so what kind of vote range do you believe he might end up in?
If I would expect him to be between 32 and 35.
Oh, there you go, Tiger fans. And it doesn't sound like there's going to be any shock winners this year like there has been in the past. It seems like it's, almost a sure thing that either Dusty or Danger will poll the most votes, but Danger obviously being ineligible. Yeah.
So look, I think it will be interesting if Dangerfield wins. It's interesting with Brownlow medalists the following year. I've done some investigation into it. If the Brownlow medalist wins and is seen as a worthy winner and is generally a good bloke, then it doesn't affect their future polling. If they are seen as an unworthy winner, like the umpires have in brackets got it wrong, then they're usually punished the following year. And we've seen that with Bartel. We saw that with Judd after he won in 2010. In 2011, he struggled big time. But someone like Robert Harvey, didn't matter for him. He was a worthy winner, and backed it up. It depends on whether the umpires see Dangerfield as a worthy winner, which I think he was last year, whether they see him as a good bloke or whether they think he's a bit of a knob. So I don't know how we calculate the knob factor in my calculations, but I personally think he is a knob, so I think he might struggle a bit, and that's why even though my model is showing Dangerfield's more likely to beat Martin, I'm not going to put my house on that.
Fair enough. And do you reckon there's any kind of reason as to why forwards and backs don't poll votes? I mean, Alex Rance, for example, for us, he would be by far one of our most important and best players, and he does it on a weekly basis, like with his defensive work, but will struggle to get any more than 10 votes.
Yeah, look, there's a number of factors. I mean, obviously, it's a midfielder's medal. You know, they're in front of the umpires. They're doing the hard work. You know, their visibility is high. If you've got tats or, you know, blonde hair or all those sort of factors that make you noticeable, then it's only going to help your ability to appeal to the umpires. I mean, there are other things that, you know, stand out, like players who both get a lot of frees and even those who give away a lot of frees. They often generally poll quite well. Someone like Liberatore Senior, who won the Brownlow medal, he was the leading frees against for the season, and that seemed to be an interesting factor that affected his ability to poll well. And Dusty, you know, he's very noticeable. You always know where he's on the field. You know, his don't argues and his bullocking style obviously appeals to the umpires. He was actually on my radar a couple of years ago as someone who generally polled more than you would expect the raw numbers to suggest. So that coupled with a dominant season meant he was always going to have a massive year. And I can't see any reason why the umpires won't give him the votes he deserves on Monday in 2 weeks' time.
Well, it should be definitely an interesting watch, and fingers crossed it does get over the line for us. But Brownlow Guru, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your expertise. Very much appreciated, and I'm sure the Tiger fans would love to hear about all that.
Been a pleasure.
Thanks, mate. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Richmond BigFooty Tigercast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and YouTube so you can follow all the roast and toast, the reviews and previews, and all topics Richmond. Also keep an ear out for our special episodes of interviews with past players. Go Tigers.